He's good.
The
Yeah.
songs I've looked it up actually, but the diss tracks, they're pretty good.
Oh yeah, Dame doesn't play on the mic.
Yeah, we usually do a countdown, but tonight I already held my man too much, and I don't want to take up too much of his time. And we tried to set this up and make sure it was good and he was comfortable, but like we want to jump right into it because having Jessie here is a big deal, and we got you at the right time, man. For people that don't know, I met Jessie because give him a shout out to your channel, man. You've been doing big things. I think you just hit 1,000, right?
Yeah. So Last Second Sports, you can check us out. We're mainly a 49er, San Francisco 49er, and a Detroit Lion podcast. We used to branch out into all sports, but we've really narrowed it down just to give our subscribers some consistency. So yeah, man, we just hit a big milestone. We just went over 5K not too long ago. So yeah, it's growing for sure. We enjoy it. But like I said, the best part is we enjoy it. We have fun doing it. And that's really all it comes down to. The subscribers, they can come, they can go. But the people that really rock with us, those are the people that I just love, man, because they are diehards to the show. They've been there since the beginning. They rock with us every episode. And that's really what it's all about, is making real human connection through this screen that we've got in front of us.
Well, some of the bigger people they're like little rocks, man. They're like little insignificant little rocks, and then other people are boulders. And I don't pay attention to subscriber counts, man, because like the fact that you would jump on and we only have 50 subscribers, that doesn't matter to you, and like you prove it, And the one thing I like about Last Second Sports was that you guys obviously had Super Bowl success, had like you're at the pinnacle, you're going against Tom Brady, and then you got Rad and guys like me as a Lions fan at the bottom. So you literally cover the top of the sport and the bottom of the sport. But this man's underselling himself because he knows his stuff, man. You know all sports, and like that's the thing that's cool about your channel. When you cover the 49ers and then the Lions, you end up covering everything in between. Like I know we're at the top of the draft, so you guys are right near the bottom, and then vice versa when it comes to standings. Like that's kind of what me and Mike like to do. We just like to go from football to UFC to like we do a lot of live content. Like we honestly do like a virtual bar like experience that no one's heard of before, where we just pop in whatever live sports going on. It could be. I'm gonna get Mike to watch some live golf at some point. We're gonna do a live golf sweat. I'm gonna purposely watch some sports I've never watched before, like lacrosse or something at like 6 a.m. Just like I like that kind of vibe and that kind of
Memorial Day lacrosse championships. It's always the lacrosse Final Four, Memorial Day weekend. That's the time to watch.
But that's the kind of stuff I want to do with this show. Like I just want to put us on and like find new people. Like we were on here the other night, man, and we're not that big yet. This man was speaking Russian to me. I'm like, I'm gonna have to pull my translator up. I'm gonna learn something while I'm talking about my favorite sport. So that's what I love about sports, though, is just how it translates, man. It is truly the melting pot. I think food and sports is like the melting pot for culture.
That's just it, right? Like you can get people that are all walks of life, and sports can bring you together. I'll tell you a story. So you talked about the UFC. I'm a big MMA guy. I've trained in MMA for 21 years on and off. It's a big part of my life, and it always has been. I've been into the UFC since UFC 1. We're talking Hoist Gracie, VHS tapes, like since way back in the day. And I became a huge Conor McGregor fan very, very early on before he was in the UFC. And he had an interview with Ariel Helwani where he talked about he didn't have a pot to piss in. He was eating blueberries. It was one of the best, most genuine interviews I'd ever seen. And so UFC 189, it's supposed to be Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. Now, I'm going to Vegas because I want to watch this fight live. I end up not buying tickets, though, because I had a weird feeling that Jose Aldo was going to get hurt. Sure enough, he did. But I was in Vegas for that moment. I was at the live weigh-ins, and I did watch it at a local bar. And we're like mid-fight. And, of course, you've got a majority of the bar chanting USA. They're rooting for Mendez to win the fight. And then you got a small group of us that are rooting for Conor McGregor. And when Conor won that fight, it's the weirdest thing. You just end up hugging this guy that you've never talked to this man before. You have no idea what he does, what his life's about, nothing. But for that small moment, you guys are both rooting for this same fighter, and the joy and jubilation that comes from that. You end up hugging this man like he's your best friend. Didn't even know his name, but that's what sports can do to people. It can bring people together. It certainly can cause divide, right, between fan bases and whatnot, but it is the great equalizer. It brings people together. And the other thing that's great about sports is that people have so many opinions that go into it, so many different perspectives at looking at things. It's fantastic. Sports are the best, man. They really are.
I agree.
I want to get Mike in here because I know Mike's a huge UFC guy, but like, again, I'll mention it because I know a podcast can go from an hour to hour and 30. Sometimes we can go a bit long. But what was it last podcast, Mike, where I went off on the WNBA and the NBA while giving props to the UFC for that same kind of mantra, was that the UFC is one of the only sports that actually gives women a platform. But yet, idiots will still tell you that the UFC is human cockfighting because it's not in the mainstream. And that's the one thing I will say about ESPN. It's helped that sport get into the mainstream. And so we might not like that Stephen A. Smith was in the first ESPN broadcast, and they hyped him up more than Joe Rogan. That made me cry as a true fan of the sport, that Stephen A. Smith would even go into the UFC cage and pretend like he was anywhere as knowledgeable as like a Brian Stan or but that kind of exposure was necessary. And it drives me nuts that the NBA, and you guys can go back and listen to the full tape, promotes the WNBA, but almost on like the side banner in between Steph Curry hitting threes and getting a steal on the other end, but doesn't really mention it. Dana White's not afraid to put a Russian and a Brazilian in the cage if it sells tickets, and then lets them tell a story. Or say, hey, Ronda Rousey and Holly Holmes are going to fight. And then we all know he was in bed with Ronda. He made money off of Ronda. There's even sexual scandals with Ronda. He'll answer those questions. Like, he might think they're stupid. He might call you stupid. He might call you a dumbass, but he'll answer it. Where like Adam Silver or Roger Goodell, you ask them a sexual question, they're running off the stage. And so, like, that's the kind of thing you're talking about. It's like going to the bar and just like hugging this guy you've never met before. He could smell a BO and mortar oil, or he could, smell like the most fragrant man in the world. It's just like that moment, dude. It's irreplaceable. But go ahead.
Really is.
I know you're a huge UFC fan. Mike loves it anytime you meet somebody that likes mixed martial arts as much as he does. So.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, man, you sound like you know more than MMA than me. Being a UFC 1 fan, like I didn't get into it until probably like the early 2010s, like right around there was when I first got my real introduction, like 2010, 2011. And I don't know, I was very casual then, and I've been, progressively becoming more into it, and I love it. I've never trained or anything like that, but if you ever want to get in on, we're trying to do like live broadcasts where we do like a live chat. If you ever want to get in on one, you're more than welcome. We're looking for more people who, enjoy the sport and know about it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge man. Yeah, I'm huge. And it's a beautiful sport. To me, hand-to-hand combat is the root of who we are. I mean, this goes back to the old days, right? Like
Animals.
We're talking Sparta and fights to the death. And, it's just it's a part of who we are, the warrior spirit. And so for me, just seeing these guys go out there and not just do it recklessly, but go out there and perform at a high level in all forms of combat. To me, it's beautiful. It's as beautiful as a picture that you can paint. You're talking about the best in the world, super athletes going out with their skills on display. And even though they've all learned a little bit of everything, you still have guys that are specialists in certain areas, and just seeing how that mixes and matches. It really is a beautiful thing. I love mixed martial arts. It's a fantastic sport.
Well, as our podcast grows, people are going to learn more about me personally, and hopefully, our guests or the people we bring on, these conversations just organically start. I thought we talked about the NFL, and I'm not getting off this UFC topic because that's the thing is not enough people know about it in like this true sense. Like I listen to a lot of Luke Thomas or his breakdowns, and people go deep into the UFC, or you get like the people that again they just want to. They're like, oh, is this guy like Mike Tyson? Am I going to see a knockout? Like, so you very rarely see like UFC in a medium. That's why I feel like the sport's lacking. It's lacking the entertainment of the medium, and Joe Rogan probably is like the best representation of that. Like he can go casual or super deep. But as soon as they figure that lane out, and ESPN is helping bridge that, I feel like it's going to be huge. And sports betting, I think, is going to be huge with that because I think we're going to see a lot more like Amazon. You probably might have even heard about this, Jesse. Amazon thinking about, so they're going to do all the Thursday night football games, right? They're thinking about running no commercials. So Bezos might just buy the whole commercial slot and run no commercials just to quote unquote be different. And then he might run a uncensored Peyton Manning like broadcast where he brings in like Marshawn Lynch and just like Marshawn Lynch and the boys, and they just shoot the shit, like literally shoot the shit, probably throw the shit against the wall, like
Marshawn Lynch doing shots of
right
or Hennessy.
But that brings me to another question. I know I'll set you up here because I know that me and you are on the same age, and like we can be fans of teams, but not laundry. And like, it drives me nuts when like I'm a Lions fan, but people are like, "Oh, you like Devontae Adams?" It's like, dude, he's like one of the best receivers. So like that's why I kind of want to bridge this into. It's like it's a melting pot, like a family, right? We all fight with our families. We all might like certain family. I will always like this one uncle more than this other uncle. Like I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or not, but I do it, and they know it.
I agree.
Yeah,
I'm here with you.
Yeah, that's just truth. But that doesn't mean that other uncle's a terrible person. So
agreed.
So when Jessie is watching his 49ers and cheering against them, and he sees Marshawn Lynch a couple weeks later run for that monster playoff run, it's not like he can't get excited and say, damn, that guy was a good running back. That's what pisses me off, Jessie, in sports and football, and like just how people are so strong. We're like, I can't cheer for this guy. He's against my team. Get out of here with that nonsense.
Yeah, as long as they're not playing your team, like that's where that line comes in. And I'll say this: I definitely made that mistake when I was much younger, and we're talking 90s when Jordan was still playing. I hated Michael Jordan, absolutely hated him, despised him. Now at this time, I'm between the ages of 10 and 15, 16 years old or whatever. And then towards the tail end of his career, I really grew an appreciation for him. And so when Kobe Bryant came along, now being a Blazer fan, I don't like the Los Angeles Lakers whatsoever. But I made sure that I stepped back and I appreciated Kobe Bryant's career and what he did because I didn't want to miss it again. And that's the way I felt about Jordan. It's almost as if I missed how great it was because I spent my whole childhood disliking this guy. I didn't want to make that mistake again. Same thing with LeBron. And so I think you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, you do root for a team, a logo, a jersey. But at the same time, especially as you get older and you realize that these are just normal people, you just want to see the spectacular. And you really root for everybody as a player, as an individual. You hate to see things like injuries when they happen. It makes you sick to your stomach, even if it's a rival of yours and it's going to make your team better, right? As a kid, maybe those perspectives don't come into place. But as you get older and you really start to realize that it's just sport at the end of the day, you can start to compartmentalize those thoughts and realize exactly what it is that you're watching, appreciate it. And even if it's not your favorite team or it's not your favorite player or whatever, you can appreciate the moment for what it is.
I agree with everything you said there, except for what was it? It was just like I don't always root for the logo or the team. Like, and not to say that was totally off base, but like the points where you said like, no one, you just want to see the sport as it's like the greatness of sport. You know what I mean? Like those plays, like the last second drama, like that's what as a sports fan, I love. And it's funny that you talked about Jordan, like how you didn't like him as a kid. And it, I was weird as a kid. Like I was born in 87. I'm from New Jersey. So the Nets weren't that good when I was a little kid. So I liked the Knicks and the Bulls because they were good and they had good players. And the Knicks and the Nets were always on, but the Knicks were always on more. I feel like back in the day, sidetrack, but New Jersey wasn't always like on mainstream cable, which is weird, but I know for a fact the Devils weren't. But anyway, so I watched like a lot of Knicks games, and then Jordan was just Jordan. So you watch Sports Center as a kid, like you just fall in love with that guy. So I love Jordan, and he was on enough on the East Coast where like I'd watch him. And yeah, the Knicks, I love John Starks and Patrick Ewing and Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. And then when the Nets got good when I was in like middle school, like Jason Kidd, Kenyon Martin, I like them. And then so I just tend to like players more. Like and it's different for me in basketball than any other sport because I've been a Giants fan my whole life, a Devils fan my whole life. I've gone back and forth with the Mets and the Yankees, but I'm a Mets fan now. That's
and a lot of it is geographical too. Like I remember, like baseball wise, right?
100%.
So baseball, growing up in Portland, Oregon, you had the Mariners, but the Mariners weren't good when I was a kid. And so basically every kid I grew up with was either a Cubs fan because they were on Channel 9, or they were a Braves fan because they were on Channel 7. Right. And that's the way that it was. Yep. Everybody I knew was a Braves fan or a Cubs fan because that's what you always saw on TV was those two teams. The Cubs weren't any good. The Braves were very good, but that's who everybody rooted for based off of that. So a lot of times it's what's put in front of you. And, I think that's a big reason why I'm a 49er fan is, on top of my dad introducing me, but the 49ers were the team that was always on Fox. It was the 49ers and the Cowboys. That was every single week. That's who you saw on Fox television and on, what was it, CBS or ABC or whatever it was back then. It was the Seattle Seahawks because they were the closest team. And that's a big reason why even before the Seahawks were any good, I really had a dislike for the Seahawks because once they came to the NFC, they came to the NFC West, they took all the Fox games. So now my 49ers weren't on live TV. And so I had to find different ways to try to watch them and whatever else. And so I hated the Seahawks even before they were good because of that. So it's interesting how geographics and what is thrown on your cable television really can influence who you're a fan of and who you're not. So it's crazy how that works out.
And it is funny that Logan threw the Seahawks green on as our
I see that.
Our name tags, but he was just trolling you there, I guess.
Seriously though, I wanted to get all the colors represented. I knew Jessie would come in with a 49ers red. I knew Mike would come in with some off-colored hat. I was like, I gotta rep my favorite team. I don't always throw a Lakers style hat, but I want to tie in our comments because we got some comments of these younger guys as well. We want to get them part of the conversation. But my experience is very similar. Besides, it's even a bit deeper. My parents do not like sports for the most part. Like my mom grew up with a father who liked baseball, and that was pretty much it. She didn't really care about baseball. He didn't really care about any other sports besides billiards and baseball. So like the exposure wasn't there. My dad, on the other hand, hated sports altogether. He hated what sports did. My dad's like a weird, like mechanical guy. He doesn't really like the competitive nature. He wants to figure out how things work. So it's just weird because there's a lot the same. We didn't have cable. Like I grew up in the sticks. My parents didn't find any need for cable. They thought oh, the TV's gonna rot your brain. We'd rather be playing outside and that kind of stuff. It wasn't until I started having surgeries. I mean, I had like 8 surgeries by the time I was 12, I think, at one point. And when you're in the hospital bed, I was like, let me just try, to watch some of this TV that, most people aren't. My parents weren't around. And so, but the only games on were like the regional games. So a lot like Jessie, you see the Seattle Seahawks, and I saw a lot of the Rams, the greatest show on turf, Isaac Bruce. So then I'm like, maybe I'm a Rams fan. But then they were so good. And like, I'm the underdog. I'm the guy who literally had 8 surgeries by the time I'm 12 years old. Like, I'm like, I can't cheer for the glory dog. Like, the guys have already made it to the top. Like, I'm an underdog. So I'm like, I got to find a way to get to the Lions. So like, here I am trying to tape up some, elephant ear looking antennas with some tin foil, and I'm putting plates on top. I'm just trying to get the Lions to come in. And finally, my first Lions game, I see Jason Hansen kick a field goal kick, and funny enough, he ended up being our like highest scorer for like 10 years after that. So like that's, I'll expand on that later because we don't want to take up too much time. But that's the kind of like grassroots that you want. And I think that's also a cool thing because people get jealous, like of our come up. People of my generation are like, well, when I was a kid, there was only 2 games on. Now these kids have like streaming services and they have NBA League Pass. They don't know what it's like. What's this guy know about Jordan being the GOAT? Like, how can he say that? It's like, maybe he watched Jordan on YouTube. Maybe he's 45. Like, we all have different exposure levels, and we all have different journeys. But if we enjoy something, that's what sports is supposed to be, And if that enjoyment, like that's another thing I don't like about sports is people are always telling Dan Patrick, for example. I know this is one of Dan Patrick's big things, is people would tell him during COVID, stick to sports. And he's like, but if I stick to sports, I'm not talking to the businessman on his way to work. I'm not talking to the independent conspiracy guy in his basement. Like that's the bridge, man. Like, and like, it's true though. Like, if you can get those guys to connect, that's why you don't stick to sports. And that's what, like I always mention it. Like, I love Christmas Eve more than I like Christmas. And the reason why is because on Christmas, you get together with your friends, you get together with more family, you bring, dishes to pass, that kind of thing. And so like, I want to see what dishes, Jessie brings and what kind of takes he brings. And like, I like that I'm not a 49ers fan, and you are, and like, you bring that color or that shade to the table. I don't know, that branches off so many more great conversations. So what's the greatest non-sports conversation you had because of sports?
Oh gosh.
And maybe you already said it with your bar experience, because that was a great story, by the way.
No, I mean, I think I'll say this. I started this YouTube journey February of last year, right? And my story is, I started it with Rad, the Lions guy and a couple other guys, right? Since then we've narrowed it down to just Rad and I, but throughout this journey, I've had Twitter since like 2012. I never ever used it, never once cared about it, a couple posts here or there, but never really got into it. And over the last 10, 11 months or so, I've really started to utilize my Twitter, and I've met a lot of people through doing these streams, a lot of other content creators. And I can genuinely say that I've made some now lifelong friends by doing this, meeting other people, meeting them at games, getting to know them. So I wouldn't say there's one conversation in particular, but just getting to know people that I would have never, ever talked to if it wasn't for social media, if it wasn't for creating content, and just some people that, like I said, I now consider lifelong friends. And we come from different walks of life. We're at different stages in our life, but really none of that matters because we have a commonality in the San Francisco 49ers and or content creation. And so knowing what goes into especially the content creator side and how hard it is to get traction in it, get people to view, bouncing ideas off of each other of how to grow your platform, and just knowing kind of the grind that goes into it, and how really sometimes it can be dark when you're out there by yourself, because you go through your comments, and everybody does this, especially early on, is you read all the comments, and people will make a comment about maybe the way you look, or the way you sound, or the way you stuttered over a word, or an opinion you had that ended up being wrong, or whatever. People are brutal, man. They're absolutely brutal. But getting to know people that are in that same walk as you is very, very important, I think. And a lot of times it's what keeps you going, because maybe you don't feel like going that night, but you got somebody to pick you up. So for me, it's just creating lifelong friends and people that I would have never, ever met if it wasn't for this platform.
That's beautiful. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
no, I agree. Well said.
Like, do you have any stories of like where you went to watch sports or interact with sports in some way, and then met somebody or something happened and it went beyond sports, and you were like, "Wow, that changed my life," or maybe not even changed your life. Maybe you just helped the person out. Like you're on your way to the bar and you see somebody on the side of the road, and like you helped them out. You made a difference in their life. Like those are the kind of stuff I like.
I mean, yeah, no, nothing comes off the top of my head about a specific experience like that. But no, I liked what Jessie had to say. Like, I think that was really cool about just, it's not about all the negative feedback you might get from some randoms, but it's the lifelong potentially friend you make,
Well, me and you would be watching sports.
experiences you have.
Yeah, we'd be watching sports regardless, like, so you might as well watch it with other people and then learn something in the process, because you'll accidentally learn more than when you try to learn. And that's what my senior year of high school, I tried to tell all my teachers that. I'm like, the more authentic you are with the student, the more you gain their trust. And then once you gain their trust, then they're willing to listen to you and things of that nature. I'll just say, like, my quick story, and we can move on to another topic, is that just like I love DFS because I thought, like, okay, I can combine a hobby with making money. But then you break down that stereotype of this gambler being in this dark alley, like these scummy people. I'm not kidding, Jesse. I've met some of the best people, and I've volunteered for like soup kitchens and Christmas gatherings and like kids basketball camps, and been around people that say they're about that life and I'll give you money. But the gambling community has been the most philanthropic community I've ever been a part of. They're like the coolest people. They're the most understanding. There's another host that usually joins us, Gov, and I won't get into too much of his personals, but we bonded over a disability commonality that he has in his family. And like, we didn't know each other before DFS and gambling. So people can like look at sports betting and be like, oh, it's dark and it's dangerous and it's casinos and it's like midnight, bookies, and there's danger everywhere. Like, if you eat too much candy, there's danger in that. But guess what? The same danger happens when you eat too much broccoli. Like, if you overindulge even in things that are seen as healthy or unhealthy, that's the problem. And so as long as you find that balance, and like you say, friendship helps you with that balance, being able
Absolutely.
to, stuff like that. Who's the one player or like one moment, because we just got off the draft, right? And oh man, I gotta tell you what, this is my favorite time of year with the draft, because it's like put up or shut up time. Like, I hate all the mock drafts, because like, to me, anyone could do a mock draft. It's like my nephew could do a mock draft, just like March Madness bracket. He could gamble based on his favorite teddy bear names or something in March Madness. Like, that's what I think of.
And win, which is the crazy part.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think of mock drafts. Like, they just get silly at some point. But now it's put up or shut up time, because it's like, now you have to evaluate what you said in your mock draft. Who's like the one guy that you wish you could So you have to take somebody of equal talent off your team, but you can put anyone on you can put anyone on your team from the NFL, but you have to take them off. So like if you take off Lamar Jackson, you have to take off a quarterback, and it has to be like a Pro Bowl level player. Like who's that guy for you? Anyone come to mind?
Ooh, man. I
I
would
get rid of
say
Daniel Jones for any other quarterback.
no, let's see. So
Well, let
I
me.
like I like dominant defenses. Okay. I like
Okay.
dominant defenses that are gonna get after the quarterback. So for me, if I could put like a TJ Watt on this team and
Right.
remove, let's say, a Debo Samuel, right? Debo Samuel's a top player at
He
his
wants to
position.
get out anyway.
Yeah, there he wants to get out anyways. Here's your out. I would make that swap for sure.
Yeah.
Because I know that with Bosa on one side and TJ Watt on the other, I'm going to absolutely wreak havoc on any quarterback in the NFL. I feel very, very confident about that. And especially the way that the 49ers are built, I look at Kyle Shanahan and I think he can make some good things happen on offense regardless. So I would get rid of a Debo Samuel for a guy like a TJ Watt and just have a dominant pass rush.
I would love to see that trade because I think
Man,
that's a fair trade. I mean, on the spot, you called that, and like, I mean, it's Debo who is. I mean, the reason he's asking for a trade is because he's like, I played 2 positions last year. You want to, you just want to pay me as a wide receiver? Like, give me a break. You want to use me as a running back, though? Like on top of that, which is gonna affect my career. Like I get why Debo wants to trade. So I was gonna get to that later. We'll get to that topic on what you think as a 49ers fan, because I'm sure that's like, I don't know, that's just got to be tough. Like, I'm sure you fell in love with Debo this last season.
yeah, he's my favorite player in the league, no question
No,
about it.
like, all right, maybe we can go right to that now, because that sounds like I get it. Do you get it? Why he wants to trade though,
Yeah, 100%. Listen,
or
I mean, at
wants
the end
more
of the
money?
day, for sure,
And
when I was talking earlier, Mike, I said that yes, I root for the uniform, but I start to realize that these are just regular people at the end of the day. They're regular people that are very good at a sport and make a lot of money to do it. But they have regular thoughts just like we
right,
do. They have regular feelings just like we do. And when I look at a Debo Samuel, knowing, by the way, Debo Samuel's a little bit older. So he's 26 years old already. He may only get that one real big contract. I don't know if it's just money related with Debo. I think there are many things that it could be, and I don't want to speculate fully on that. But I want Debo Samuel to get paid. I do. I don't agree with everything that he's done up to this point as far as how he's gone about it. But knowing that he really doesn't have a lot of leverage against this $1 billion organization, he kind of had to pull out all the stops in order to make this work. And so for me, Debo Samuel doing what he has to do to get paid, I totally understand it. I respect it. I hope it happens, whether it's with San Francisco or another team, although I feel like it's going to be the 49ers at this point. But either way, I want him to get his, and I'm always going to continue to root for the 49ers. But Debo Samuel is my favorite player in the league. I recently picked up a signature of his during the middle part of this last year, was happy to do so. And yeah, I totally understand where he's coming from, and I respect it.
Logan,
Well,
you want to go first?
blood, sweat, and tears. You know, like I think that's what you respect about him, and I don't think enough people realize that. And I'm not a big in stadium guy. Like I don't get a whole lot from the in stadium uh, thing. I don't. I'm not a big drinker. I'm not a big like rah guy. I like watching sports with like-minded people, but I'm very like I wouldn't even say analytical, but like I like the coaches element of it. So I like being able to watch replays and like really break things down with my friends and rewind and watch that play back and see what really happened in real time, or just like pause with my friends to like react to a moment. But when you see somebody like I got Kobe Bryant's autograph, or even Chris Mims' autograph, like, but I swear to you, I respected Chris Mims or Sasha Vujic the time that they signed my autograph just as much as Kobe, even though I was more excited as a fan because they literally sweating on me, and I'm like, wait, these are people, like. But it's not until you get there and you notice that, like, that's the biggest takeaway. And I don't need to really go to any more games in my lifetime because, like, all the other stuff didn't really matter. But the moment they like at one point, Chris Mim like fumbled with my pen, and then like, but it allowed me to ask him about Texas and UFC with Vince Young. That was the year that they were in the national championship game, and like, but it wouldn't have happened if he didn't fumble with my pen, like human element, like. But you don't see that kind of stuff if it's on TV because it's so polished, or they're doing a pregame show, or Stephen A. Smith has to give his take here, or your local beat reporter has to, tell you the injury report. But when they touch you, or you see that, hey, he has a certain shoe on for his daughter, or a wristband, like that's the kind of stuff I live for. And I think that's why, like, the NBA League Pass or MLB The Show and like these kids being able to watch all these other broadcasts, or like the Rockies or the Diamondbacks, are valuable because it's like, yeah, maybe my friends are jealous because they get to watch all the games, but like exposure and that level makes the players more human. And maybe Debo's a bad person, but maybe he's a bad person, and like. And like,
why is he a bad person?
Well, let me finish right now. Maybe he's a bad person in like the area of study of math, right? So, and you only see him in math class. So he's not good at math, and so you form this opinion. But I think the more avenues we see, like the more universal experiences we get with these players, even if it is like a Kyler Murray deleting his Twitter and showing his displeasure. Maybe he wanted to play with his college teammate. I want to do a podcast with my friend Mike. That's okay. Like, it's okay to cheer for him to get his money and also be a 49ers fan. I don't know why these things have to be like one or the other. Like what we were saying a couple weeks ago when I called into your show. Why's it got to be one or the other?
But that's just it though. Like, right. Like some people are like, oh, it's red and gold till I'm dead and cold. And no matter what, like I'm always going to root for the name on the front and not the name on the back. And it's like, hey, yeah, okay, I get it. Like if Debo leaves, I'm a 49er fan forever, right? Debo's only going to last in this league for 10 years or whatever it is. But it doesn't mean that I can't root for him to be happy and get his money. Like a lot of people look at players as currency almost, right? They bring you pleasure, they bring you joy, and when they can no longer do that, you chew them up and you spit them out. And that's the way that I think a lot of these owners think about these players is they look at them as currency or assets or whatever. How much money are they bringing to my bottom line? How many people are buying their jerseys? How good are they? And once they aren't those things anymore, it's on to the next one, right? And so I just think that human element of things is so damn important. And especially when you look at these players and as their careers end and they're in the twilights, just imagine being in a spotlight where everybody loves you for X amount of time. And then all of a sudden, in a snap of a finger, that's done forever. It leads to depression. It leads to going broke. It leads to all these horrible things. In a lot of these cases, you've got guys with CTE and all these other things. And these are just things that we don't really think about or compartmentalize. We hear a story here or there. You see a sad news flash of a junior Seau, let's say, passing away, taking his own life, whatever. And then you're on. It's over with. But these are human lives that are at play here. It's not just an athlete or a robot or an asset or currency. These are real people, and I think the faster or the more that you realize that, you can really kind of remove your fandom out of this and just root for the story and the human being. And then also, once that's set aside and that's done, root for your team because that's what you like, right? Like it's okay to do both.
Well, I bring that up a lot because, like, look at Sam Howell, right? He gets drafted by the Washington Commanders, and people are like, "Oh, he slid. Why did he slide? Was he hurt? Was he?" Maybe he was, but maybe it'll be the best thing that happened in his career. You know, like maybe he'll get like a Drew Brees level chip on his shoulder, or maybe like that's a good fit for him. You know, I don't think like does it really matter that Tom Brady was drafted in the 7th round or the 1st round? Like he's still playing over all those other players that were drafted either in the 1st round or the 6th round. Like so, at some point, it's like put up or shut up time. I think that's why Mike wants to get back to the UFC topics and like loves the UFC because we've had that conversation before. It's like you got 2 guys locked into a cage, and one of them is going to win, and one of them is going to lose. But the mentality isn't winning and losing. Like that's what shows the most like sportsmanship of any sport I think there is because they really are. They could kill each other. But like you could explain that sport to my grandma just like you could explain it to a child. And I think that simplicity is awesome because it like people in this chat we were having a conversation and I feel like the conversation and the guy's like Michael Jordan's a GOAT. It's like yeah, but what are we going to compare that to? LeBron James, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Bill Russell. Like you can't do that. It's different eras. Some played in Peach Bowl, some played in basketballs with technology. When it comes to the UFC, you can pretty much tell like 2 guys get locked into a cage, even a woman, you're gonna find out who the toughest person is that night. And they always say that night because like you get awesome rubber matches. So what's the one rubber match that you want to see, Mike? Like what's the one rematch that you just can't wait to see in the UFC? It might be happening. It might be a dream match.
I want to see. I forget how to pronounce her name. I think it's Wang Li versus Joanna.
Weili Zhang, yeah.
Yeah, Weili Zhang. Yeah, Weili. Yeah. That fight was a banger. Good. And I know I had bet Weili on that fight, so I was a little biased watching that fight. And I was very happy with the result, obviously. But I remember watching it a second time on ESPN2 or something like that when it just re-aired. And I was like, wow, what a great fight again. Like, but then the second time I watched it, I was like, I don't know why I was so confident that Weili won because Joanna was banging. And granted, like, I think Weili won because Joanna's face was looking like she was from outer space. Like she looked like a Martian. She had obviously the hematoma that was her entire forehead. She looked like an alien.
It looked like Hey Arnold. It really did. I mean,
it was brutal, man. It was brutal.
But that I would love to see that fight because I don't think Joanna's fought since, right? I feel like I've been waiting to see her fight again because that was one of the things when I saw the replay. I was like, wow, she really like. I know her face took a beating, but she was very much in that fight the entire way. She landed a lot. She just doesn't have the same, I feel like, build that Weili has, where Joanna's skinny and like she's also a vet, so she's just had all that probably beating taken on over time. Like I think that probably played a factor in why she blew up so much in the forehead. I could be wrong.
Yeah, that was a brutal fight. That was a good fight, though. That was a very good fight.
Yeah, I mean, all Weili's fights with actually the first one was that quick knockout, but the second one was pretty good too, if I remember correctly. But I like Weili, but yeah, I do think she would beat Joanna a second time. I will bet that as long as it's not too heavy juice. You think Joanna wins?
Yeah,
She's had a long enough time off to recover, but is she ready?
But I think it'll be a fun fight. And to speak to what we were speaking about earlier, that's the cool thing about that is like when you get to the high level, they can do it so many different ways. And like people like say, oh, like I only want to watch the bangers. Okay, they put out 18 different fights. Watch the prelims, okay? If you never want to see like different bangers, because the same people that want to say, oh, I want to watch the stand-up fight, are the guys that are like, well, I only want to watch the marquee or the main event. It's like, well, you're only watching 3 fights then, and you're then going to be mad because you didn't get the result you wanted. Well, they put out 18 different fights there, but you missed half of them because you, like, those are the kind of people in the UFC and mixed martial arts that just drive me nuts. And then people that don't give like Bellator a chance because there's tons of good UFC. I mean, the PFL is doing really good work, you know.
One Fighting Championship does a good job.
And so like that's what I find interesting too, is like people don't realize like I'm a huge fan of football and just want these young kids to get chances. We talk about Debo wanting to be a running back and a wide receiver, and part of that is to show versatility and be like, hey, look, I can do this. And you don't see DeAndre Hopkins doing this, and he's taking drugs. But and I'm willing to be a running back and a wide receiver. And like that's kind of sad to me that that's the biggest sport, the NFL, right? But we only have one of them. Like only one football is being represented. I mean, the USFL is trying, Canadian Football League is trying. I will say mixed martial arts is worldwide and it's really widely respected because Bellator can survive. Like, so all these people want to make fun of it, like, oh, it'll never be bigger than the NFL. In some ways, I think it's already bigger. Because if you look at MMA as a whole, like, we get good fights every single night. So to get you back in here, Jesse, I'm going to hold you, not dream match, because everyone asks dream match. What's the, like, rubber match? The, like, the other rocking chairs and you would still watch these guys fight. Like, you know they're going to bring it.
Oh, man. Well, I'll go with current guys. It would have to be Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz. I mean, these guys have done it twice. Diaz shocked the world at UFC 196. Conor came back, I believe it was UFC 202, and was able to win the decision. I think both of these guys right now are at the perfect point for that rematch. You know, Conor was on the ascension, right? He was going to win that second title, the first ever champ. Then he went and fought Floyd Mayweather. He was just on a whole different trajectory than Nate. But Nate gained a lot of notoriety from that. Obviously, the diehard people knew exactly who the Diaz brothers were. But Nate Diaz really, just as far as popularity, took a major step forward. And that was great to fight McGregor and actually start to get that recognition he deserved. But they're both now at a point where they're coming off some losses. The weight class really doesn't matter. You know, Nate's in his final fight with the UFC before his contract's up. Conor's coming off a catastrophic injury and a couple losses himself. I just think now is the perfect time to do it. That's a fight that will always sell. Those guys, the build up to those fights, just the way that they talk. Conor McGregor's the polished speaker, really good with his tongue and his words. Nate Diaz, not so much, but he's just so real. You know, he's from Stockton. People love that. I just think that those two mesh so well together, pre-fight, post-fight, during the fight. I just think now's the time to make that happen if it's ever going to happen. So I would love to see McGregor and Diaz 3.
You know what the fight I really want to see again? I want to see Amanda Nunes against help me out. I'm drawing a blank. I guess I must have.
You're talking about the 125-pound champion?
Dana.
No. I want Amanda Nunes against Shevchenko.
Yeah, Valentina Shevchenko. Yeah.
Valentina. I need to see that again. Because the thing about those two is they're assassins, but they're the sweetest assassins you would ever meet. Like, Valentina is like she is like a hitman. Didn't you play the Hitman video game? Like,
yeah, great game.
She will sneak up on you and she will slaughter you in the night. But then she'll make sure that your family's taken care of. Like what kind of person she? I mean, I watched her on the Joe Rogan companionship. I mean, and it was just like it was like that moment. And I think that's why the UFC pulls me so much. It's like they're fighters and they're so aggressive and it's like dire. And then you watch them in a 3-hour podcast. Like I know Joe Rogan's podcast is 3 hours, but there's not a lot of sports people that would go on a Joe Rogan like show and talk for 3 hours. Like, can you imagine if I don't know how big of a basketball fan you are, but being a Warrior, I mean, you had Kevin Durant wouldn't have the guts to go on Joe Rogan's podcast as sensitive as he is, and I don't even mean that as a negative thing. Like he's just sensitive. That's how he is. That's him. Like that's his personality. But like I think that's what's cool about fighters is that they're like raw and they're come up stories and so like they just don't care in the same way. And Dana White, like the way he runs this, like he celebrates when he gets streamers and like he almost dances on their graves and like I don't know. I think that's why that sport pulls me. Now, if they ever do a senior division though, I gotta say there's been rumors. I think it's mostly joking, but the first fight in the senior division better be Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonner, because that fight got so much. I mean, that fight put him on the map. So if we're ever going to do a senior division Greg Norman style of golf, we need Stephan Bonner and Forrest Griffin to step in the cage one more time. I guess that would be my Heather Lover match outside of Valentina. And but yeah, I got to see those two fights. I think
tough one, man. Yeah, that's where it was at. That's where really they started to take off, and it's crazy because I remember a couple of the fights before that. You had, Randy Couture coming down from heavyweight, beating Tito Ortiz, and then beating Chuck Liddell. And then, that was, I believe the rematch was tough one. They were both the coaches, and that was the second fight, and Liddell ended up knocking him out. But yeah, that was it, man. Tough one is really what sold UFC to the masses. That's what saved their business. It's crazy.
It saved them, like literally. And I bring that up to say people have been saying that's what the USFL needs. Like they need that like random Saturday, Easter's over where everyone's made their jokes. The league's kind of like in that teetering moment. They need that where I text Mike, at 1:00 and I'm like, hey Mike, Jeff Fisher's actually doing it. Like, like this game's good. Shea Patterson has like, this big highlight moment. That's what they need because it literally saved the UFC and put them on a rocket ship. Now, Jesse, is there anything we missed today you want to hit on? Any questions you want for us?
Actually, I do have a question for you. So, you've called in quite a few times, and you always ask me random questions, which I love. But you alluded to it a little bit earlier. The podcast name is Wheels Up Podcast. You talked about having a lot of surgeries when you were younger. And I've seen you backstage. I believe you're in a wheelchair. I could be mistaken about that. Yeah. So, what, you don't have to go in depth into everything, but like, what's the story there? Like how'd that all come about? It sounds like it all started at a young age, potentially. Like, would you mind sharing that story?
Oh yeah. So I was born premature with cerebral palsy, which for anyone that doesn't know, that's just a neurological thing where I didn't get enough oxygen to my brain. And what's difficult to explain and why I had such a chip on my shoulder when it comes to these things is because cerebral palsy, I could be wrong, and I don't care if I am. That's the cool thing, and that's kind of like what I carried along and kind of how I do sports in general. It's like that's why I never like first take, for example, because like I don't agree that there's like one take and I gotta have this take and Jesse's gonna have this take and we're gonna meet. Like that's not how I can be wrong just as much as I'm right, and that's how you learn and I'll learn. But so with cerebral palsy, there's like 80 different classifications. All it means is there was supposed to be oxygen to my brain. That oxygen gets shut off. Well, once it gets shut off, it's like a house burning down. It's like, when can the firefighter get to the house, put out the fire? For me, it affected my left side of my body. So my hand is like this. It's still functional. Like my other hand, I got full function. So basically, 80% of my disability is fine motor skills.
Mm.
So like I've had surgeries to open up my hand and make it more functional and stuff of that nature. But like this hand will never be fully functional. Well, what that also does is it affects the left side of my body, like the entire body, but especially my legs, makes them weaker. So then they curve in, things of that nature. Well, it affects the left side of my equilibrium, which means I can't walk because then my brain doesn't understand balance. Now, the difficult part about that and what really motivated me and like still carries me on to this day is when that happens for some people, they go mentally into retardation, like in the scientific term. I don't mean it in like the intelligence standpoint, but where it affects their brain. Luckily, the firefighters or doctors in this case got to my, they protected my brain. That was their number one. They put me in an incubator, protected my brain. So I'm, for the most part, fully as smart as a white guy from the country can be, I guess. But what that does is a stereotype. Because I'm disabled, because I'm in a wheelchair, I was perceived a certain way. And that's, I guess, why I'm always interested in the human element. Like, I like to take one commonality, like sports or like reading a book. Like, I love book clubs, for example, because I like to like read a book, be like, oh, I thought this about this book. What did Mike think about it? Mike has to have a different take. Because like I physically look different, but I emotionally feel different. Like I've always been in touch with those emotions because of my outward appearance and because I've been treated differently. I mean, I've seen kids knock themselves out because I look so different that they like walk into walls. But then the parent will yell at their kid. But then I've seen a parent walk into a bathroom door the same time she's yelling at her kid about looking at me because she looks back and got scared at the same thing. It was like I was a boogeyman. You can either embrace that and teach, and embrace. Like it took me like 8 years almost after my college degree to get a job. I could look at that as a negative, or I could be like, look, because of this disability, I'm going to learn something, I'm going to appreciate it more and that kind of thing. And I can get into more of that, but that's why I attest to like the 7th round rookies or, that's why like the undrafted free agents, like a Carson Strong, for example, I'm more happy for him than I am the stupid gimmick that we do, the Mr. Irrelevant. I would hate to be Mr. Irrelevant because he doesn't get to choose where he goes. At least Carson Strong can be like, screw you, NFL. My knee was in shatters, and that's why I didn't get drafted. But guess what? I'm in a better spot than Sam Hall or Willis or, And I'm glad that we went an hour tonight and we didn't barely talk about like the same mock drafts or winners and losers. Like, trust me, I love that content too, and I probably watch way too much of it. But at some point, it's like you almost watch the same soap opera over and over, and they're just tossing each other in the bed. And Grandpa wakes up from 3 heart attacks, and he's living it. So, like, I'm glad that you brought up a different topic, and I got to dive into that a bit. So, thanks for
absolutely,
that.
absolutely. Yeah.
You got anything?
What's that?
You got any questions for Jessie? Jessie, got any questions from her?
I got a question for Jessie. Just since I know you're an MMA guy now, is there any fight in particular you're looking forward to this upcoming Saturday? Particularly in the main event, I'll go through the names if you want, just to be, just so you don't have to look them all up real quick. You got Cerrone versus Lauzon, which I think is a good fight.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked up Lauzon because I was thinking of taking him. And
is that Joey?
Yeah, Joe Lauzon, and but he's had like 2 to 3 years off, and
yeah, he hasn't fought in a long time.
Yeah, no, I always liked him, though, and I was initially thinking go against Cerrone, but Cerrone's taking some time off, too, to be honest. So, and they're both having more losses than wins lately. But anyway, so then the fourth fight is Shogun Hua versus Oven St. Preux. You got, and then here we go with the big three. You got Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson, Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza, and then the main event, Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. Any fights out of there where you're thinking like,
Yeah, so
just
the two that
anything?
stand out to me are Shogun and Ovince St. Preux. I've been a Shogun guy since the Pride days. I mean, he was one of the most talented young up and comers I had ever seen. Brutal with soccer kicks to the head because you could do that over in Pride. Love Shogun. Way overdue retirement for him. The fact that he's still fighting is crazy. But I love Shogun. And then Rose Namajunas, I think that she mops Carla Esparza. Now, Carla Esparza does have a win over her in the Tough House. She ended up winning that initial title because of that win over Rose. I think Rose is just light years ahead of her. But Esparza does still present some interesting problems because she is such a strong wrestler. And I think that style can be interesting. Esparza could go up against some of these girls and probably get mopped pretty quick. But against Rose, like she may be able to actually hold her own a little bit because of that wrestling and that style contrast. But Rose is one of my absolute favorites. I love her and her boyfriend, Pat Barry. I just think their personalities are fantastic. So yeah, I would say those two fights to me are the ones that I'm looking most forward to.
Yeah, I think I like Rose a lot too. I think she's definitely gonna hold her own for a while at the top of that division in the women's class. I loved her fight against Wei Li again, and even before that, I know she had that loss to Andrade, which kind of shocked her a little bit. I think she admitted that, but she's bounced back in a big way. I believe she beat Joanna, right, too, if I remember correctly.
Who, Rose?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rose has beaten Joanna twice. She came back and beat Andrade, beat Wei Li Zhang twice. She's just beaten everybody.
Yeah.
She's
she had the head kick that first time against Wei Li, and then the second time she just beat her outright. Like, I think that one was decision. But
she's a true martial artist, and that's what I love about the females, especially in that weight class, is like Joanna for a while was the champion. And there was a time where I was like, she just world class wise, the best fighter in the world, regardless of sex. And now I feel that way about Rose and Shevchenko. I just think skill for skill, size for size, everything. I just think they are so good, so well-rounded, just so special. I love watching both those women fight. And before we get out of here, Mike, keeping it on MMA, who are your three favorite fighters? And it could be past, present, whatever, just your three favorite fighters of all time.
You need a little bit of time, Mike? I can buffer about the fights this weekend if you want to give it some thought, unless you got your three ready to go.
All right. You buffer it out. I got one, and it's going to be cliche, but it's because he's fighting this weekend. But it's just, I mean, he's your favorite fighter's favorite fighter. If that gives you any
Gaethje? Is it Justin Gaethje?
Yeah. I think he's got to be like. How do you not love that guy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who doesn't like Gaethje? Honestly, I think if you did a poll of the UFC fans, I think Gaethje would be in the top 5 for most respected, most liked. I don't think there's that many detractors. Of course, there'd be the cotton candy people that would be detractors just for the sake of it. But man,
well, when you think of Gaethje, if I was going to introduce somebody to mixed martial arts, and if you could just show them one fight to draw them into the sport, Gaethje's a fighter that you would show. Right. Maybe you would show him Rory McDonald versus same card, by the way. We were talking about UFC 189 earlier, but yeah, Rory McDonald versus Lawler 2. That fight was a co-main event to the UFC 189. Yeah, those are the types of fights that you would want to show people to draw them into the sport.
Yeah. Brandon Moreno, Figueiredo,
yeah.
Any one of them, honestly, they were all wars.
Now you guys missing it. You got to show them. You got to show them Hunt Brock Lesnar. No,
gosh.
I'm completely kidding. By the way, if I had to show someone one fight, it would be that Stephan Bonner Forrest Griffin fight, or
For sure.
it'd be a George St. Pierre, BJ Penn fight. Like
BJ Penn's my favorite fighter of all time.
he was just recently on the Joe Rogan podcast. If you want to do a deep dive with BJ again. He was giving
I'll have to check that out because he kind of went in a whole weird direction there for a while. It was dark, we talk about leaving the limelight. I mean, BJ Penn's a true fighter's fighter. I mean, he came from money, didn't have to fight at all, just loved to scrap, never really trained and got the best out of him because he just didn't care enough, but he rolled in and just would beat the best people in the world because he was so far superior from a talent standpoint. BJ Penn's one of my favorite of all time, no question about it.
Yeah, I think you would really like this interview. He talked about wasted opportunity and almost being that doughy kind of Hawaiian-y kind of guy where it's just like, oh, carefree, but really it's like, damn man, if you would have calculated just a little bit differently, you could have been like, I already think he's near Mount Rushmore in terms of like, you can't tell the UFC without BJ Penn, but like just what could have been.
Well, BJ Penn fought at all weight classes against he went over to a Japanese promotion and fought Lyoto Machida before people knew who Lyoto was at 200 pounds. Like, and arguably won that fight. Like the decision went to Lyoto, but I think BJ might have won that fight. And BJ is a natural 150-pound guy. Like, that's just how incredible this guy was. If you haven't seen it, you can go watch it, but he entered judo black belt matches. Obviously, he's a white belt in judo, but a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He entered those tournaments and was mopping those fools very, very quickly. BJ Penn's a different type of animal.
Mike, do you want to tell the man your favorite fighter? I think it's perfect now, man.
All right, I'll also throw Frankie Edgar into the mix just because he's a New Jersey guy. He's actually he's a Toms River guy, which is a couple towns over from me. So I got to show some love to him. And I know he's been not a guy I would put my money behind lately. I say that.
He's older, though. You know what I mean?
He's older. He's a legend, man. He's done it for so long in the beginning, like going back to, and that was actually even before I was really a huge fan, but I've had to go back and look at some stuff, and his trilogy with Gray Maynard and I don't know, he's had a great run, and he's had the title. It's just been tough for him because it's like he's small, and finding his right niche in the weight class is tough. And everybody else is cutting weight. He was trying to fight at 155. It's crazy that he did for so long. Like,
he really is, because he's so undersized.
Yeah, but he is a machine with like the head movement and his feet and his head. But yeah, I love Frankie Edgar. He's got to be in my top three. And then I mean, it's tough. Like, I saw Alan mention Nate Diaz, and I'm thinking about him, and I liked how you mentioned the Diaz McGregor fight. You want to see that next? Like, I have to put Conor McGregor. I also thought about Anderson Silva because I loved his style. Like I just love that. Like I want to call it like the now I'm losing my mind on what was the movie with Keanu Reeves, The Matrix, where he just like, he's always doing this shit, like leaning back. Like, I loved seeing those highlights. Like, that just, I don't know, it captivates me. But I gotta go with Conor just because he does it well, and it's disappointing lately. Like, I say he's my top three, and it's just because I'm a fan. I'm not saying he's top three now by any means. Like, he's on that point where he's just got to start. He's got to win something, at least, like anything. the Cerrone fight doesn't even.
It's crazy, like how quickly the sport catches up to you, right?
Yeah.
Like you're
Yeah.
so unbeatable. Anderson Silva, we talked about. The only person it hasn't happened to, well, two people. One, Khabib, but he retired at a very young age. Like, you're retiring at 30 years old. That's very, very young. Or 31 or whatever it is.
Right.
But John Jones
Yep.
really is the only one that was able to
He-
stick around, and a loss never really caught up to him. It's crazy. And we'll see what the layoff does for him and the heavyweight division and whatnot. But it's just this sport catches up to you so quickly. And for Conor, it was leaving at the top of his game to go box Floyd Mayweather. It changed his style. It changed his movement.
It did.
Calf kicks became a thing when he was gone, which he had never dealt with before. And we're only talking about a 2-year lapse of being gone. And the sport just evolved so quickly that he was so far ahead of everybody as far as his movement, his striking angles, everything. And he came back and he was all of a sudden so far behind everybody. It's crazy how quickly MMA does evolve. And just watching it happen it's again, that's why it's such a beautiful sport.
Yeah. I was just gonna say too, the thing why I put Conor in my top 3 is just the rise he had, and then even while he's been, I mean, you can't even say he's been mediocre because he's lost I don't know how many of his last. Cerrone is the only fight he's won in the last I don't know how many, but
Mike,
he's always entertaining. Like, he's always got that build up. You always have that hype when he's got a fight, and I know the next time he fights, I'm getting that pay-per-view
for sure. Yeah, no doubt about it.
I don't care who he's fighting. He could it doesn't even have to be for the title. Like, it could be a Diaz, but I'm getting that. It could be anybody, because whoever he fights is going to be another big name, obviously. And I want to see, does he show up or does he get knocked out? Like, I'm so drawn in with him, and that's why I kind of love him. Like, I don't even care if I don't root for him. Like, I love him, but I would put him as, like, he's just so box office.
He's must-see TV.
Well, Jesse, I knew we would be respectful of your time. You said you had about an hour. We already went, I think, an hour and 20 minutes, so I don't know how much more time you got. But I did have a segment that we were going to do, but I'm kind of glad we didn't get to it because we don't do a lot of segments. But I do want to introduce some games going forward. So we got to have you back, because I had this idea for a game. It was going to be called Kittle or Skittle, where you told me things you liked, things you didn't like.
I like it.
If people don't know, Marshawn Lynch, who obviously the rival of the 49ers, loves Skittles. So would he kittle it or would he skittle it? We'll bring him back on to do that again, hopefully sometime. But I have to say, though, as we wrap up, and I love that we're wrapping up on a niche sport, and like hopefully, just like this podcast, we can grow. Do you guys think, obviously, kind of putting on that much muscle is a desperation move to transform his body? Do you think that's like for show, for him to promote during like, I've changed and this is why? Or do you what advantages do you really think they'll give him? Or maybe that makes him too heavy, because sat back to the NFL real fast. Well, I buffered to give you guys some time to think about it. Like, look at a guy like Jared Davis, who got drafted by the Eagles, who people debate, well, yeah, he's a freak athletic, but what's he going to play at? Sure, he did well in the combine and ran the fastest of any decent tackle, but what's that weight really mean? So similar to Conor, what do you think it does for him? Because he's huge.
I don't think, I think his natural body type will come back quicker. Like, as he starts to train and gets his movement back and he's able to kick and fully train, I think that you'll see his body scale back quite a bit. Right now, I think the upper body blew up the way it did because it's really all he could work. And so he went, crazy with it. But I would imagine once he starts training and losing water weight and all those things, his body will start to equalize a little bit. Conor's an interesting deal because he was so dominant at 145. And I know that he's fought basically other 155ers at 170, but he's looked really good at 170. 155, I really thought, like, man, and you saw it against Eddie Alvarez, the best performance that I may have ever seen in my entire life was that fight against Eddie, UFC 205. And I thought 155 was the perfect weight class for Conor. It just never really materialized for him for whatever reason. It's interesting because you never really saw him gas at 170. You never really saw him gas at 145, but at 155, that gas tank just didn't hold up. And I thought that was the perfect weight class for him, but for whatever reason, his body just doesn't take to it. So I don't know, like maybe that is the reinvention. Maybe he fights Poirier for a fourth time, but they do it at 170, right? Or the Diaz fight again, or he wins a fight and he gets a title shot. I don't know. For some reason at 170, his body seems to be good, and it's the Frankie Edgar argument. Yeah, he's undersized compared to the other 170ers, but he's not depleting his body, and so for him, it allows him to perform at his optimal performance level, and maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, and if he's packing another 15 to 25 pounds, depending on what weight class you're going on, like, and like you're saying, he's putting it on all in the upper body. Like, he was packing a punch at 145. I can't imagine what kind of punch he's got at 170.
Well, and that's just it, though, right? Like, I look at it, and when he was fighting at 170, he was weighing in at like 167. Like, that's what he was walking into fights at. Or he would eat a full meal and weigh in at 169, but really he was walking around at 167. Even if that body type comes back mostly, but he can be at around that 176 range with some of that lean muscle that he's added. Because he said he's up to like 195. I imagine his body type will come back, like I said, but even if it's at like 175, 178 instead of 167, that's good. Like, that's a good, healthy weight. You cut a few pounds, you wake up, you dehydrate yourself for a half a day, you make weight, but then you're fully ready to go and fully filled out. You're going to fight a guy that's going to weigh 195 that night, but he had to deplete himself. Maybe that is the great equalizer for Conor, but who knows?
Okay, so rapid fire. Does Tyson fight Ngannou?
Oh, I think that they'll get it done because Ngannou is not under contract with the UFC. I don't see anything that's getting in their way. So, yeah, it sounds like they're going to do something interesting, some sort of hybrid style, much like I think it was One Fighting Championship did with one of their Muay Thai guys versus Demetrius Johnson. They did a hybrid fight where it was 1 round Muay Thai, 1 round MMA. It sounds like they're going to do something interesting like that for charity. So yeah, I think it happens.
And that's why golf and the UFC are on their way up, because they're willing to do things internationally. They really do promote international flavor, and they promote difference. We saw it with golf doing more like team events and doing more mismatches. I mean, golf's talking about doing a woman's men's invitational next year. So, like, I feel like mixed martial arts kind of embraces that, fighting embraces that. Brian Campbell said it's going to happen. He thinks it's going to happen. Brian Campbell, winning combat, thinks it's already in the works. We saw Ngannou in the ring after Tyson's fight, speaking on it. So he said, "Just let me heal it, brother." And then he took a shot at Dana. He says, "It's time for me to make real money." So I think we're gonna see it. And you know what? Dana's gonna bet on it. So Dana's gonna make money too in Ghana. So the joke's on you, because Dana doesn't care. He lost a lot of money on Ben Askren.
Who's Dana betting on?
I would guess.
Oh, Tyson Fury.
if he's putting his money,
unless they make it a hybrid, if they do some sort of hybrid where it's like 1 round boxing, 1 round MMA,
right.
I would still Ngannou's gonna mop him.
Yeah, Ngannou proved that in his last fight he can take guys down and just do the ground and pound.
Well, and not only that, but Tyson's got chicken legs, man. You kick those things, I mean, it'll be over quick.
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah.
It's true, but I still take Tyson, even if they did like strokes play kind of thing.
Tyson Fury's
And he's a real life Undertaker. You can't bury that man. He'll rise from the dead.
He's an enigma because like he's a unicorn. He's like got such a weird frame, but his hands are fast. His feet are fast. Like you don't expect that with a guy that size and that frame at all.
No, not at all.
He looks like he should be a hunchback or something like that. Like not like the guy who's just like, yeah, I got you. Like I don't know, like the old school like. I don't know. I'm picturing like a black and white movie where the guy's like,
we gotta get this man out of here. He was
all right.
But yeah, man, I'm telling you, it was nice having you. You can come in at any time. Hopefully, the little podcast that could. Hopefully, we showed up pretty well and you enjoyed.
Hey, listen, no, I love it. Like I said, it's something different. Obviously, I stick to the 49er content, but I'm into all sports, all conversations, whatever. So it's nice to do something outside of the San Francisco 49ers and just be able to talk and shoot the shit with you guys. So I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I'm glad
thanks for coming, Jesse. This was nice chatting too. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad this came together last second. And give people one last plug. You see what I did there?
I like that. That was good. Yeah, Last Second Sports. You can check us out over there. Like I said, mainly 49ers and Detroit Lion content. But I appreciate you guys. You guys have a blessed night. And maybe you'll call in the call-in show here in a couple of days, bud, and we'll talk again.
Oh, you know me, I'm a gold digger now, man.
Yeah. All right, y'all. You have a good one.
All right, you too, man.
Later.
Have a good one.
That was really cool, Mike. I don't really have much more to say. I mean, that was just an organic, good conversation.
Yeah.
You're a great dude.
I'm good.
I never anticipated talking. I did not know he was a UFC fan. I got to say, that's the kind of eye-opening, like, organic conversation I love. Is like, I didn't know what he was. I asked him if he wanted to talk about something. He's like, no, I don't want to. I'm like, usually
no, he was like way more into UFC than I could ever have been. Like he's like, oh, no, I've been into UFC since UFC 1. Like, that's pretty much, as far as I know, that's the beginning of UFC. It starts with 1.
He trained 20 years, so I mean, I by the way, shout out the man. I meant to say he went through a health scare. He just recently recovered. He's on the mend. He talked about it on Twitter, so like he's let his followers know. But the dude's tough as nails mentally too. Like we talked a lot about physicality. And I want to mention like mentally, he's a great dude. He's got some great stories of how him and his father bonded over on his live stream a couple of weeks ago. That's what he was referring to when he brought up my personals. Like the guy is just genuine. He'll give his subscribers time to chat. Like he just likes having organic conversations. So I should mention we have 51 subscribers right now. If we get to 100, we would be doing a giveaway. So like and subscribe for any new people that are going to be seeing us. At 100, we're giving away some good prizes. Mike, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? I mean, I think the guy's going to come back just for the fact that we talked about the UFC and like it's almost like UFC people recognize real when like you can talk about sports that don't get the national attention but should. It's like that's like a good barometer, man. And I think
if you like the UFC, you like the UFC.
Right.
Yeah, usually. Yeah, people who like to talk UFC aren't always. Not all your friends are UFC fans. I'll put it that way. Like all your sports fans aren't always UFC fans.
Right.
A couple of them might be, and those are the ones you can talk UFC with.
And
but they don't know. It's not like they're always around.
I'll leave it on this unless you want to talk about something else. What I find fun about the UFC is, have you ever been to the bar or like a family reunion? Because we always bring up the bar, but we might have younger viewers, so we should say, have you ever been to a birthday party, right? A family reunion, and someone's like knows you're into sports, so they feel obligated to talk to you about sports, but they haven't watched sports in 20 years, or maybe they don't even watch sports at all.
Yes.
They just have their worst take, and you're like, man, cousin Jimmy is a good dude. I don't want to blast him for this. I'll just say there was one guy, and he saw me with a Michigan shirt on, Mike, and he's like, "Oh, I grew up in Ohio. I'm an Ohio State fan." Oh, that's okay, man. I appreciate all different shades. I might not like him as much as Amazing Blue. He said, "Who's your favorite player?" And this is like a year ago, Mike. He says, "Troy Smith."
He was your favorite player.
Tell
Who's your
me,
favorite player now? Currently on the team.
Troy Smith, I believe, played in 2000. For anyone who doesn't know, he was more of a running back than a or more than of a running back wide receiver kind of build, kind of like a Terrell Pryor before Pryor for all you young kids, and just never caught on to in the NFL, but was like a terrific athlete. Actually had his moment for Heisman for his second day.
Yeah, I was going to say, he almost won.
So 10 years make that reference. I'm just like, oh no.
All right, we got a game here.
We do.
Memphis has a 1-point lead. Ja drives and he hits it. Nice little floater with the left hand. Curry's bringing the ball up, steps back, dishes to Draymond. Draymond turns around, almost loses it, regains the ball, dishes it to Curry. Oh my goodness, that was crazy. Clay with the shot, and he's fouled, or is it a travel? What is the call? And now they're going to the replay. They're not helping me out at all here.
Like a lot of people think that Jaylen Brown and Klay Thompson are Robins on their teams. Tonight, both of them proved that they're Batman. So there's different versions of Batman. I gotta say, I like Klay Thompson without the headband. Though
Klay must have traveled there because they're giving the ball to Memphis. And Memphis is up 3.
Yeah,
it's going to be inbounds after the timeout.
It's the headband, man. Clay's got to get rid of that headband. I've never leave the headband for Mike Bibby, Clay.
Clay's worn the headband since Jackie Moon.
Well, Jackie McMullen would tell him it's time to take the headband off. All the Jackies are on my side of it.
No, Jackie Moon says,
Well, that'll be our next
tropics till the end.
That'll be our next podcast. Yes, book it right now, Jackie Moon.
But
that was really fun, man. I hope he comes back in again because,
hey, if he wants to do that, we're doing one on Saturday, right, for the UFC.
Yeah.
If he wants to get in, more than welcome.
And if any of his viewers, I know we still have some of his viewers in here as well. You guys don't have to like and subscribe, but we are giving away at 100. We're giving away some good prizes. And the reason we're doing it so little is because we want to appreciate small growth. I'm all about appreciating things at all levels. Like, I don't want to wait until a certain number when other people do things. I want to give back when I feel like it. And we decided 100 was fair. So that's what we're doing. At 100, we will do a giveaway. And so hit the like button, subscribe. Talk about subscribing. I think we got to do something different than the fan towels. We got to evolve. We evolved past the finger in the crowd. We got to evolve past the towels. The towels should be historically left for the Steelers. There should be historic teams that still get to wave the towel, but enough with every team having a towel.
What about those New Year's twirlers?
Oh yeah, those gotta go too. The New Year's glasses, they gotta go. Bourbon Street can keep
the blowers that blow the.
Yeah, they're only allowed at 12-year-old birthday parties. And
kick them out. No one needs that shit.
I will say you can have
that.
It's like kids in jerseys to me. If the player is younger than you, I think you can wear the jersey. Or sorry, not younger than you. That would be. If the player is older than you, you can wear the jersey. I feel like that should be.
I like that.
So, but that's cool because then we get to pay homage to the dinosaurs of the league, and I don't think that is a bad thing. Prehistoric things are cool to me. I would love it. I would even rock a Bill Russell jersey, man. I'll give him credit because but seriously though, like, we were talking about with Jessie and rabbit ears and like only having limited exposure. Isn't it cool that we have that? Like now we have NBA League Pass and MLB, and me and Mike can watch all the baseball games. But there was something nostalgic about having to pull out that old, the old telephones and have phone booths and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm glad sports is where it's at. I do.
What about those clapping sticks? Those like air sticks that you'd clap and they'd make a loud sound if the whole stadium did it.
Okay,
is that what you're talking about, Gov?
I think that's what he's talking about. Okay, so I say this, Mike. You can keep one. You can keep those little sticks, or you can keep the Hi Mom signs in the college stadium. Which one stays? Which one goes?
I overrule both, and I say let's bring in the vuvuzelas from the World Cup that was in South Africa, where they're all playing these like. It's called a vuvuzela, but it sounds like when everyone's playing it in unison in the stadium, it just sounds like there's a massive beehive that just got struck by, your neighborhood kid who's like a pest. But the beehive suddenly thinks you're the enemy and it's about to chase you. And that's the sound for the entire game. How good does that sound?
Pretty good.
No, it sounds terrible because that was the World Cup back when it was in South Africa. I believe South Africa, and I apologize to South Africa if I'm getting it wrong, but I believe it was you guys.
No, but see, I like that. Like I like that they're so passionate. They're starting fires in the stadium. I mean,
Alan gets it. Yeah, vuvuzela. Yeah, that's how you say it. I believe, right? He knows what I'm talking about. They were terrible. They were the worst thing. I swear I had to mute the game. It was South Africa. Thank you. All right. Google is done.
See, Mike.
Or maybe he's making fun of. Oh, no, he did say it was. All right, I missed the it was one. Yeah.
But here, let's end that serious. I'm glad that Steph Curry missed that three. And this is why. Because for so long, Sports Center would be like, it's almost like they create these capsule moments for Steph Curry can't miss a three, or John Moran, he has to drive. John Moran hit some big threes today, and Steph Curry made some big playmaking plays. I think we got to start acting like these Superman performances are just like, they're not one way or the other. We talked about it with Jessie. Well, me and Mike appreciate what Jessie appreciates, what we all should appreciate in sports is the mix, is the melting pot, is the different diversity. Don't limit John Moran to some dunker or some layup master guy. Don't limit Steph Curry to just a three-point shooter. He missed a three-pointer just now to win the game, but he's a terrific dribbler. So stay balanced, stay mixed, have opinions, come back and see us. We'll be here. We'll definitely be here this weekend for the fights. I do have some family coming into town, so my schedule might be a little bit scatterbrained, but I will come in for the fights. We'll do some kind of, it's too big of a fight card, and my mom's too old anyways. So by that point, we'll be ready for the main card. We'll be ready to pop off. And by the way, I was going to close up shop, but Mike, you know that Joanna Jędrzejczyk Rose non-humus fight. She was quoting Bible quotes that Rose is a different type of assassin, man.
Yeah, she's different. But I did want to say one thing before we go, too. One, happy birthday to Logan, because it's midnight, at least on the East Coast.
It is.
And may the 4th be with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
But happy birthday most of all.
It is with me now, and not Harrison Ford, because no one cares about Star Wars or Harrison Ford anymore. Right?
Yep. Both of them can both.
But I will always remember the 4th until I die, and then I won't be here to carry the mantle. Maybe Harrison Ford will, because he's an alien. I don't know. With that being said, thanks for the birthday wishes. I'm out. I'm about to go to sleep probably because I got to get up early in the morning. So nothing too crazy for me on my birthday, but I'll get up.
Close out. I'm about to go to sleep after this, probably.
Who knows?
That's a nice closeout. It's genuine. We're transparent here, folks.
As Charles Barkley always says, we got to do 20 more minutes of this, or can we just close up shop? We're just gonna close up shop, just like that.
Good night.